Rahul was a man who had everything that most people only dream about. He owned a successful company, lived in a big house, and had more money than he could ever spend. Yet, on that rainy night, none of it felt important. He had just come out of a long business meeting that ended in disappointment. A big deal he had worked on for months had failed. As he drove alone on the empty highway, his thoughts were heavy. The sound of rain hitting the car roof matched the storm inside his mind. The road ahead was dark and wet. The street lights flickered in the distance, and the windshield wipers moved quickly, trying to keep the rain away. Rahul held the steering wheel tightly, his eyes fixed on the road, but his mind was far away. He was thinking about his business, his lost money, and the mistakes that had led him here. He drove faster than he should have, wanting to get home and forget the day ever happened. Suddenly, a sharp turn appeared ahead. Rahul was too late to slow down. The tires slipped on the wet road, and the car spun out of control. His heart raced as the car skidded to the side and crashed into the guardrail. The sound of metal bending and glass breaking filled the air. The car flipped once, then stopped upside down near the edge of a small slope. Rain poured harder, and steam rose from the engine. A few meters away, a young woman named Amina was walking home from her evening shift at the clinic. She was tired, her umbrella barely protecting her from the storm, when she heard the loud crash. She turned her head and saw the car, smoke coming out of it. Her heart skipped a beat. There was no one else around, no passing cars, no lights from nearby houses. Without thinking twice, she ran toward the wreckage. Amina was not a rich woman. She worked long hours at a small clinic and also gave private lessons to help her younger brother with school fees. Life was not easy, but she always believed in helping when she could. As she reached the crashed car, she saw a man trapped inside, his face pale, eyes closed but still breathing. "Sir! Can you hear me?" she shouted, her voice trembling from both fear and the cold rain. Rahul opened his eyes slightly, but his head was heavy and his vision blurred. He could hear a voice, soft yet urgent. He tried to speak, but only a weak sound came out. Amina quickly looked around for help, but the road was silent. She knew waiting for an ambulance might take too long. Smoke was filling the car, and the smell of fuel made her heart race. She pulled at the door, but it was stuck. The rain made her hand slip, but she did not stop. With all her strength, she managed to force it open just enough to reach inside. "Hold on, I will get you out," she said firmly, though her own hands were shaking. Rahul felt someone pulling him. Pain shot through his shoulder as he was dragged out of the broken seat belt. The cold rain hit his face, waking him up more. Amina pulled him away from the car just as a small flame began to appear near the engine. Within moments, the car burst into flames behind them. Rahul lay on the wet ground, gasping for air, while Amina tried to shield him from the rain with her umbrella. Her clothes were soaked, and her hands hurt from the struggle, but she felt relief that he was alive. "Can you move? Are you hurt badly?" she asked, kneeling beside him. Rahul coughed and shook his head slowly. I think I'm okay. My shoulder hurts, but, thank you." Amina looked at him carefully. "We need to get you to the hospital. Can you stand?" With her help, he managed to stand up, leaning on her shoulder. His expensive suit was torn, his watch scratched, but in that moment, none of it mattered. The night was still dark, and the rain kept falling, but something inside Rahul felt strangely calm. They slowly made their way to the main road. Amina waved at a passing car, asking for help, and soon they got a ride to the nearest hospital. Rahul sat quietly, watching her as she spoke to the driver, her voice gentle yet steady. He had seen many people in his life, business partners, investors, assistants, but none of them had ever looked at him with the same simple concern as this woman who risked her own safety to save a stranger. As the hospital lights came into view, Rahul whispered, "What is your name?" "Amina," she replied softly, still holding his arm to keep him steady. That was the first time Rahul felt that his life had been given back to him, not by money, not by power, but by the courage of a stranger in the rain. The next morning, Rahul opened his eyes slowly. Bright light filled the hospital room, and the soft beeping of a monitor echoed in his ears. His head felt heavy, and his shoulder ached, but he was alive. For a moment, he just lay there, trying to remember what had happened. Flashes of the night came back: the rain, the sharp turn, the crash, the smoke, and then a face. A young woman's face. He turned his head slightly and saw a nurse checking his chart. "Good morning, sir. How are you feeling?" she asked politely. "My shoulder hurts, but I'm fine," Rahul replied, his voice low. "Was anyone here with me?" "A woman." The nurse smiled lightly. "Yes, she brought you here last night. She said her name was Amina. She left after making sure you were safe." Rahul sat up a little, his mind restless. He remembered her voice in the rain, the way she pulled him out, the way she stayed calm while everything around was falling apart. He had met many people in his life, but no one had ever done something like that for him without asking for anything in return. Later that afternoon, the door opened quietly. Amina stepped in, holding a small bag. Her clothes were clean now, her hair tied back neatly, but her face looked a little tired. "How are you feeling?" she asked gently. Rahul gave a faint smile. "Better, because of you." "Thank you." She shook her head. "You don't need to thank me. I did what anyone should do in that moment." "Not everyone would risk themselves for a stranger," Rahul said firmly. Amina looked at him for a moment, then placed the bag on the table. "I brought you some food. Hospital meals are not always the best." Rahul was surprised. "You didn't have to do that. I was on my way from the clinic." "It was not a big thing," she replied simply. There was something different about her. She did not look impressed by his name or the expensive watch on the side table. She was calm, polite, but distant, as if she wanted to make sure he was fine and then return to her life without expecting anything. Rahul wanted to know more. "Where do you work?" "The nurse said you were coming from a clinic." "Yes, I work at a small clinic nearby," Amina said. "And sometimes I give lessons in the evening. It helps with expenses." "You have family?" he asked. "My younger brother. He is studying. I try to support him as much as I can." Rahul listened quietly. For the first time in a long while, he was not thinking about his business or his losses. He was thinking about this woman who worked 2 jobs, walked home in the rain, and still found the strength to save him. Amina stood up after a few minutes. "You should rest. The doctor said you can leave in a day or 2. He nodded. "Will I see you again?" She paused at the door. "If I pass by, maybe. But please don't feel you owe me anything. I only did what was right." Rahul watched her leave. The room felt strangely empty after she was gone. He had always believed that money could solve everything. If someone helped him, he paid them. If someone worked for him, he rewarded them. But here was a woman who did not ask for a single thing, not even his name. Over the next 2 days, Rahul thought about her often. He learned that the crash had caused only minor injuries, but it could have been worse, much worse. The doctors said if she had not pulled him out quickly, the smoke and fire might have made it impossible for him to survive. When he was finally discharged, Rahul asked the nurse for Amina's contact. The nurse hesitated. "She did not leave any number, sir. Only her name and the address of the clinic." Rahul nodded. "That's enough." Outside the hospital, his driver waited with a new car. The rain had cleared, and the city was bright again. Yet, Rahul felt different. The crash had shaken him, but it was not the broken car or the business loss that stayed in his mind, it was the moment when a stranger chose to care. On the way home, he kept looking out of the window, lost in thought. For years, he had lived surrounded by people who smiled when he succeeded and disappeared when he failed. But now, a woman with no reason to help him had risked her safety and asked for nothing. That evening, he sat alone in his big house, the silence louder than ever. For the first time, he wondered what his wealth truly meant. Was it only for building taller buildings, or could it mean something more? And in that quiet room, Rahul made a small promise to himself: he would not let this moment pass like any other. He would find her again, not to repay her with money, but to understand why someone like her still believed in kindness when the world was busy chasing gain. Rahul returned to his large house, but it no longer felt the same. The walls were high, the lights were bright, and everything was in its place, yet there was an emptiness that followed him from the hospital. For days, he moved through his routine like a machine, signing papers, attending meetings, answering calls. But every time he sat alone, his thoughts returned to the rain, the fire, and the woman who had pulled him out. He tried to push it aside, but the memory stayed. He thought about her calm face, her steady hands, and the way she left without asking for any reward. It made him uncomfortable. Not because she had done something wrong, but because he had spent years believing that people only helped when there was something to gain. One evening, Rahul sat in his study, looking at the city lights through the window. His assistant came in with a folder of reports. "Sir, should I leave these here?" "Yes, just leave them," Rahul said without turning his head. The assistant hesitated. "You have been quiet since you came back from the hospital. Is everything all right?" Rahul gave a small smile. "I am fine. Just thinking about a few things." When the assistant left, Rahul opened his laptop and searched for the clinic Amina had mentioned. It was a small clinic in a crowded part of the city. No big name, no big sponsors. Just a simple place trying to help people who could not afford much. He leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. "She saved my life, and she still works this hard," he whispered to himself. The next morning, Rahul decided to visit the clinic. He did not inform anyone, not even his assistant. He wore simple clothes, nothing that made him look like the millionaire people saw on magazine covers. The streets near the clinic were narrow and busy. Shops sold everyday items, children played near the sidewalks, and the smell of fresh bread came from a nearby bakery. Inside the clinic, a few patients waited on old chairs. A nurse recognized him but said nothing. Amina was in a small room, helping an elderly man check his medicine. When she saw Rahul, her eyes widened slightly, but she did not stop her work. "You came here," she said when she stepped out for a moment. "Yes," Rahul replied. "I wanted to see the place where you work." "You did not have to," Amina said calmly. "You are fine now, that is what matters." Rahul looked around the simple walls and the small shelves of medicines. "Do you always work this much?" Amina smiled faintly. "It is not about how much I work. It is about what I can do for others. People here do not have many choices." Rahul nodded slowly. For years, his life had been about contracts, profits, and numbers. Here, in this small clinic, he saw a different kind of wealth, the kind that did not fill bank accounts but changed lives quietly. As he left, Rahul noticed a young boy waiting outside with a school bag. The boy ran to Amina as soon as she came out, and she patted his head gently. "This is your brother?" Rahul asked. "Yes, this is Imran," Amina said. "He just came from school." Imran looked at Rahul curiously. "Are you the man from the accident?" Rahul smiled. "Yes, I am." "And you must be proud of your sister." The boy nodded. "She always helps everyone." Rahul felt a small knot in his chest. He had always been surrounded by people who wanted something from him: business deals, gifts, attention. Yet, this woman and her little brother lived with so little and still found space to care for others. On his way back, Rahul thought about his own life. He remembered how he had driven that night fast, careless, angry about a failed deal. He remembered the expensive dinner he had planned to attend after the meeting, the empty praise of people who only smiled when things were good. The crash had not only broken his car, it had shaken his view of life. He felt guilt for his carelessness, guilt for the way he had been living, and guilt for thinking that money alone made him important. That night, Rahul sat in his room again. His house was still the same, but his thoughts were changing. He looked at his reflection in the mirror and whispered, "What have I been doing all these years?" He remembered Amina's words, "You don't need to thank me. I only did what was right." Those simple words kept echoing in his mind. It was not about giving money or gifts. It was about doing what was right. Rahul closed his laptop and turned off his phone. For the first time, he decided not to attend a high-profile dinner that his friends had invited him to. Instead, he made a quiet decision: he would find a way to help without making it about his name or his wealth. He did not know how yet, but he knew where it would start: right there, in the small community where a nurse had taught him the meaning of real kindness. Days passed, but Rahul's thoughts did not change. The image of Amina and her quiet strength stayed with him. He kept remembering the small clinic, the old chairs, the busy streets, and her tired yet calm smile. His business meetings continued as usual, but his mind often wandered to that part of the city where life was simple yet full of struggle. One afternoon, Rahul asked his driver to take a different route back from the office. He passed by the same narrow street where the clinic was located. This time, he did not stop, but he observed. Children were running barefoot, shopkeepers were busy arranging their goods, and a few elderly people were sitting outside in the warm sun. The place was alive, but it also showed signs of need: peeling walls, broken paths, and many faces that carried silent worries. That evening, Rahul sat in his study and thought deeply. "I was saved by someone who lives in a place like this," he said to himself. "She works hard, not because she has everything, but because she wants others to have a little more." The next day, he visited the clinic again, this time without informing Amina. He spoke with one of the staff members quietly. "Does this clinic face many problems?" he asked. The staff member looked at him with tired eyes. "Yes, sir. We lack proper medicines. Sometimes patients have to wait for weeks because we do not have enough supplies. Amina does her best, but she also works another job to support her family." Rahul listened without saying much. He realized how different this world was from his own, where money was spent on luxury parties while people here struggled for basic health care. Later, he saw Amina leaving the clinic, carrying a bag of old books. She walked quickly toward a nearby house where a group of children waited outside. Rahul followed quietly, keeping a distance. From the window, he saw her teaching the children, helping them with their lessons. Their small table was crowded with notebooks, and their laughter filled the room despite the lack of space. Rahul felt something stir in his heart. "She is doing so much with so little," he whispered. The next few weeks, he began to take small steps. Without telling anyone, he sent supplies to the clinic under another name. New medicines arrived, and the staff were surprised but grateful. The children who studied with Amina received a few extra books and pencils from an unknown sender. Rahul watched from a distance, never revealing that it was him. At the same time, he started changing his own habits. He spent less time at parties and more time thinking about how his wealth could bring real change. His business partners noticed the difference. One of them asked, "Rahul, you seem quieter these days. Is everything fine?" Rahul smiled softly. "I am fine. Just looking at things differently now." Meanwhile, Amina noticed the sudden improvements around her. The clinic had better supplies, the children were happier, and a few repairs were made in the local community hall. People whispered about a kind stranger helping them, but no one knew who it was. One evening, after finishing her teaching, Amina sat with her younger brother, Imran. "Strange, isn't it?" she said. "So many good things are happening all of a sudden." Imran nodded. "Do you think it has something to do with that man from the accident?" Amina shook her head. "Why would a rich man care about this place?" But somewhere deep inside, she wondered. Rahul had visited once, and his questions were not the usual ones asked by rich people. He had not spoken about himself or his business, he had only listened. Rahul, on the other hand, struggled with the thought every day: should he tell her the truth? Should he let her know that he was behind these changes? He feared that if he did, it might look like he was trying to repay her with money, and that was never his intention. He wanted to do it because it was right, not because it would make him look good. One rainy evening, Rahul stood near the same corner where he had once crashed. The road was quiet, and the lights reflected on the wet ground. He remembered the moment when everything almost ended, and how that one act of courage had started something new in him. "I cannot go back to who I was," he thought. "Not after this." He decided to keep helping silently, at least for now. The real change, he believed, was not about showing power, it was about learning to care without expecting anything in return. Weeks turned into a month, and Rahul's quiet efforts continued. The clinic now had better equipment, the children received new study materials, and even the narrow street near the clinic was repaired by a small fund he arranged through a local group. No one knew the source of this help. It was as if a hidden hand was slowly lifting the weight off that small community. Rahul's own life began to change in ways he had not expected. The noise of high-class parties no longer interested him. The endless race for bigger profits felt less important. He still worked hard, but now his mind often asked, who is really benefiting from this work? One afternoon, Rahul sat in his office, looking at a file full of figures. His assistant came in and said, "Sir, there's a charity meeting tonight. They invited you to speak about your company's growth." Rahul looked up. "Cancel it. I have other plans." The assistant blinked in surprise. "Other plans, sir?" "Yes," Rahul said simply. "Real plans." That evening, Rahul went again to the community area where Amina worked. This time, he saw her outside the clinic, talking to an elderly woman about her medicine. There was a tiredness in her eyes, but also a gentle patience that never seemed to fade. Rahul approached quietly. "Amina," he said. She turned, surprised. "You again? Is everything fine with your health?" "Yes," Rahul replied. "Better than ever, actually. I just wanted to see how things are going here." Amina folded her hands in front of her. "It is the same as always. Some days are busy, some days are harder. But we manage." Rahul looked around at the small crowd near the clinic. "If someone wanted to make this place better, what would you say?" Amina raised an eyebrow. "People have wanted that for years. But promises come and go. Real change does not happen easily." Rahul nodded slowly. "Maybe it is not about big promises. Maybe it starts with small steps." She studied his face for a moment. "Why are you asking these things?" "Because that night, you saved my life," Rahul said honestly. "I realized I was living without purpose. I had everything, yet I had nothing. Now, I want to change that." Amina shook her head lightly. "You don't owe me anything, Rahul. I did not help you to gain something." "I know," Rahul said. "That is exactly why it matters." In the following weeks, Rahul became a quiet supporter of the area. He did not put his name on any banner, and he did not call any news reporters. He funded a new water filter for the clinic, repaired a broken classroom in a nearby school, and started a small scholarship for children like Imran. Amina noticed these changes, and slowly, her suspicion began to fade. She still did not know how much of it came from Rahul, but she saw that his visits were never about showing off. He often came in simple clothes, sat with the children, asked about their studies, and listened more than he spoke. One day, Imran came home with new school supplies. The school said a kind person helped, he told his sister with a big smile. Amina smiled too, though a question formed in her heart. Could it be him? Rahul, on the other hand, felt a quiet satisfaction. For years, his life had been about taking from markets, from competitors, from time itself. Now, giving felt different. It was not about being praised, it was about finding meaning. Late one night, he sat on his balcony, watching the city lights. His phone was full of missed calls from business partners who wanted his attention on another big project. But Rahul was thinking about something else entirely. He remembered his old ways, how he once believed that success was only about numbers. That thinking had almost cost him his life. Now, every time he thought of the burning car and the rain-soaked road, he also remembered the woman who had no reason to help him yet did so without hesitation. This is what real success should feel like, he whispered. His family noticed the change too. His sister, Mira, asked one evening, "You have become quieter, Rahul." "Happier, but quieter. Did something happen?" Rahul smiled. "Something did happen. I just realized life is not always about what we gain. Sometimes, it is about what we can give back." Mira nodded but did not ask more. She saw peace in his eyes that had not been there before. Rahul continued to plan more ways to help the community. He did not want to control their lives, only to open doors they could walk through themselves. The more he did, the more he felt connected not just to them, but to a part of himself he had ignored for years. And somewhere in the middle of this quiet change, a new purpose began to form in his heart. It was no longer about being the richest man in the city. It was about being a man who had truly lived. The days grew warmer as summer slowly settled over the city. The narrow streets near the clinic were filled with children playing, shopkeepers calling out their prices, and neighbors chatting by the roadside. Amina's routine remained the same: long hours at the clinic and evenings teaching children. But one thing had changed, the quiet improvements that kept appearing around her. She noticed the new medicines in the clinic, the repaired water pump, the painted school walls, and the growing smile on her younger brother's face. Imran had more books than before, and the children she taught were showing more excitement for their lessons. Something, or someone, was making life easier for them. One evening, as Amina closed her notebooks, she found Rahul standing outside the small house where she held her lessons. He was dressed simply, his expression calm. "You come here often now," she said, folding her arms. Rahul gave a small smile. "Is that a problem?" "No," Amina replied. "But people talk. They wonder why a man like you is interested in this place." Rahul looked at the children leaving with their bags. "Because this place matters. Because people here deserve more than they get." Amina watched him carefully. "And what do you want in return?" "Nothing," Rahul said quietly. "I am not here for recognition or reward. I am here because that night changed me." Amina remained silent for a moment, then asked, "Are you the one behind all these changes? The medicines, the repairs, the school supplies?" Rahul did not answer right away. He looked down at the street, where the evening lights reflected on the wet ground after a brief rain. "Yes," he said finally. "I did not want to tell you because I thought it might make things complicated. But I could not watch and do nothing." Amina felt a mix of surprise and confusion. "Why didn't you just say it before?" Because I did not want you to think I was trying to pay you back, Rahul said. That night, you saved me without asking for anything. I wanted to learn from that. I wanted to help in the same way. She looked at him closely. But you are a busy man. You have your business, your own life. Why spend your time here? Rahul took a deep breath. Because for years I lived only for myself. I thought money would give me everything, but it only made me feel empty. That accident showed me how quickly everything can end. When you pulled me out, I saw something I had forgotten: kindness without condition. It gave me a reason to change. Amina lowered her eyes, thinking of his words. She had met many wealthy people in her life through her clinic, but most of them gave with pride, expecting their names on walls or their photos in papers. Rahul was different. He came quietly, stayed briefly, and left without asking for anything. Imran, who had been listening quietly from the doorway, stepped forward. If he wants to help, sister, why not let him? We always tell children to be kind, and he is trying to do the same. Amina smiled slightly at her brother's words. It is not about refusing help, Imran. It is about understanding why someone helps. Rahul nodded. That is fair. You do not have to trust me right away. But I am not here to control your life. I only want to make things a little easier, the way you made my life possible again. Over the next few days, their conversations grew longer. Rahul joined Amina when she visited the school, listened to the teachers' problems, and quietly arranged support for them. Amina still kept her distance. In some ways she was polite but cautious. One afternoon, while they were leaving the clinic together, she said softly, "You know, you could have walked away from that night and forgotten about it. Most people would have." Rahul looked at her. "I could have. But then I would have gone back to being the same man I was before, blind to what really matters." Amina stopped walking. "And what matters to you now?" Rahul met her eyes. "People. Real connections. The chance to make a difference without expecting something in return." For the first time, Amina saw no pride in his tone, no hidden demand. Only honesty. It made her feel both relieved and a little uneasy. Change was never easy to accept, especially when it came from someone whose world was so far from hers. That evening, as she sat with Imran over dinner, Amina said, "Rahul is not what I thought he was. Maybe he really does want to help. But I must make sure this does not change who we are." Imran nodded. "Helping is not wrong, sister. Maybe this is how life gives back sometimes." Meanwhile, Rahul returned home that night with a lighter heart. He had finally spoken the truth, and it felt like a weight had been lifted. For the first time in a long while, he felt he was walking towards something meaningful, not because of wealth, but because of choice. The months passed quietly, yet the change in Rahul's life was noticeable to everyone who knew him. Business meetings no longer consumed him entirely. Instead, he spent time planning projects that helped communities, improved schools, and supported clinics like Amina's. His wealth, once only a source of pride, had become a tool to create real change. Amina continued her work at the clinic and in the local school, guiding children with patience and care. She had noticed Rahul's presence more often, but she no longer felt the need to question his motives. He had shown, through actions and consistency, that his intentions were sincere. One warm afternoon, Rahul visited the school where Amina taught. The children were excited as he arrived, not because of who he was, but because he always brought something helpful: books, supplies, or sometimes a simple word of encouragement. Amina watched him from the doorway as he knelt beside a group of students, helping them understand a lesson. His humility struck her. He was not trying to show off, only to be useful. After the children left, she approached him. "You never take credit for anything," she said softly. Rahul looked up and smiled. "I don't need credit. I only want to help," the way you helped me. Amina considered this for a moment. It's strange. Most people want recognition, even if they do good things. I've learned that the value of an action is in the action itself, not in who notices it, Rahul replied. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Amina felt a sense of understanding that went beyond words. She saw the change in him, the transformation from a man focused on wealth and status to someone genuinely concerned about the world around him. It reminded her of the first night she met him, pulling him out of the burning car. It had been a simple act of courage, but it had sparked something much bigger. Over the next few weeks, Rahul's visits became more regular. He never imposed, never demanded attention. He simply worked alongside Amina when possible and supported her when she needed resources. The local community began to notice the improvements, and people whispered about the kind stranger who had changed so much for their benefit. Amina began to trust him more deeply. She invited him to community meetings and consultations with school staff. He listened more than he spoke, always considering the opinions of those who lived in the area. His respect for their lives, their struggles, and their voices impressed Amina. One evening, as the sun was setting, painting the sky with soft oranges and pinks, Rahul and Amina walked together along the quiet street near the clinic. Imran ran ahead with a few friends, laughing loudly. "You've done a lot for this community," Amina said quietly, looking at the street lights reflecting on the pavement. "I've learned a lot from it too," Rahul replied. "From you, especially. You showed me that courage, kindness, and patience are far more valuable than anything money can buy." Amina smiled, a faint blush on her cheeks. "I only did what felt right that night. I never expected anything in return." "Exactly," Rahul said. "And that is why it matters. Because no one asked me to change, no one demanded it. I saw someone acting without selfish motives, and it inspired me to be better." For a long moment, they walked in silence, letting the cool evening air wash over them. It was a silence that carried understanding, respect, and the quiet beginnings of trust that went beyond words. Later that night, Rahul returned home and looked out over the city. He thought of the crash, the rain, the fire, and how one woman's courage had saved his life. But more than that, he thought about how her actions had changed him, not only in how he lived but in how he understood the world and himself. In the following months, their bond deepened. It was not a bond built on romance or obligation, but on shared purpose, respect, and the quiet understanding of lives that had intersected for a reason. Amina began to feel comfortable letting him into her world, and Rahul learned the true meaning of gratitude and devotion. Eventually, Rahul's family noticed the transformation too. His sister Mira smiled one evening as she saw him speaking with local teachers and community leaders. "You have become a different man," she said. "Yes," Rahul replied. "I've learned that life is about more than success and money. It's about impact, about helping where it is needed, and valuing people who teach us what really matters." One afternoon, Amina invited him to a small community celebration at the school. Children sang, parents shared stories, and everyone laughed together. Rahul stood quietly in the corner, content to watch, not to command or control. Amina approached him, smiling. "You've done more than I imagined," she said softly. "And you've done more than anyone can measure," Rahul replied. "You saved a life that night, but more importantly, you showed me how to live." They stood together for a moment, looking at the children playing around them. The streets that were once narrow and worn now felt alive, filled with hope and laughter. Rahul had come close to losing his life, but in that near loss, he had gained something far greater: a purpose, a new understanding, and a connection that would last. In the end, what began as a rescue on a rainy night had become a journey of change, respect, and quiet devotion. Rahul had learned that true wealth was not measured in money, but in the lives touched, the courage witnessed, and the people who inspire us to be better. And so, the millionaire who was meant to die in a car crash had not only survived, but he had also discovered what it truly meant to live.